Welcome to the Virginia Department of Education's Understanding the Regulations Governing the Use of Restraint and Seclusion in Public Elementary and Secondary Schools in Virginia. This module discusses strategies for teachers and staff to assist with resolving conflict and working with students through the escalation cycle. While this information is for all personnel, individuals may require additional training in specific de-escalation techniques and strategies, especially when supporting students with significant levels of challenging behavior. Module 4. Conflict resolution and de-escalation will focus on the escalation cycle and offer strategies for preventing crises and increasing student self-management. Additionally, we will address evidence-based strategies for supporting students when behaviors escalate and provide strategies for teachers and staff to remain focused and calm. Please note that there is a cumulative quiz at the end of this series of modules that will allow you to test your knowledge and earn a certificate. You are also invited to complete a feedback survey after each module. As noted by the U.S. Department of Education, school should be a safe and healthy environment in which America's children can learn, develop, and participate in instructional programs that promote high levels of academic achievement. Virginia has adopted these regulations to help ensure such an environment exists for Virginia's students. The escalation cycle is described in 7 phases. By understanding these phases, teachers and staff can more accurately predict how students may respond and offer some guidance for planning and intervention. The goal is to interrupt the cycle to avoid crisis behavior. The 7 phases of the crisis cycle are baseline, trigger, escalation, crisis, de-escalation, stabilization, and post-crisis drain. In the baseline phase, the student appears to be at their best and is in a typical neutral state. This will look different from student to student, but generally, when a student is in the baseline phase, they are cooperative and responsive to the teacher and tasks. The next phase of the escalation cycle is the trigger phase. A trigger is something that occurs that makes the student begin to feel emotionally and/or physically uncomfortable or distressed. As with the baseline phase, this may look different for each student. Some common behaviors that a student may exhibit at the trigger phase include hiding their face, pulling at their clothing, rocking or tapping, refusing to speak or cooperate, or being generally unfocused or off task. Triggers vary from student to student. Some common triggers may involve other people, such as a negative interaction with someone or receiving unwanted attention. Triggers may involve work or activities, such as a failure on an assignment or the assignment being out of the student's instructional zone. Triggers may also be part of the environment, such as unpleasant sensory experiences, medical changes, or unmet physical needs, such as hunger or tiredness. With children who are experiencing trauma, a trigger is not always evident. If not addressed, the trigger phase can lead into the escalation phase. During the initial escalation, a teacher may observe the student engaging in off-task, then on-task behavior, moving in and out of groups, and using non-conversational language. As the student continues up the escalation cycle, these behaviors may change in appearance or increase in intensity and may include questioning and arguing, defiance, provoking others, threats, verbal abuse, or destruction of property. If the escalation cycle is not interrupted, the student may enter the crisis phase. This phase is characterized by an overall state of out-of-control behavior. This may look like a severe tantrum, self-abuse, serious property destruction, and/or assault. In the crises phase, there is the greatest risk of harm to the student or to others. Safety is the priority during this phase. During the crises phase, Teachers will need to let the behavior run its course. Interventions during crisis are ineffective. Again, the priority is to keep everyone as safe as possible during this phase. As a student displays increased responsiveness to directions and a reduction in unsafe behaviors, the student has begun to de-escalate. During the de-escalation phase, the student may gravitate toward manipulative or mechanical tasks and avoid interactions with others. While responsiveness to instruction is increasing during this phase, students may continue to withdraw, deny, or blame others for their behavior. Students may avoid discussion during this phase and are not ready to debrief. In stabilization, the student will display an eagerness for independent work or activities and may be more subdued in group work or class discussions. In the post-crisis drain phase, students may display behaviors below their baseline. Students may appear withdrawn or depressed. Students may require rest due to emotional or physical drain. Overall behavior may show a preference of independent work and hesitation toward interactions or discussions. As teachers and staff, we are responsible for ensuring the safety of all students. The best way to prepare is to have a plan for how you will respond at different phases of the escalation cycle. It is critical to remain aware of what is going on with the student and the environment, but also remain aware of your own escalation cycle during an intervention. Teachers and staff must understand that all behavior is communication. It is helpful to assume that the student is doing their best to communicate their needs. Next are ways that teachers can communicate dignity, respect, and compassion through their actions. As mentioned before, there are adult responses and behaviors that can help to interrupt the crisis cycle and avoid crisis behaviors. The first is to form and maintain positive relationships. Second, structure the day in a way that is predictable and consistent for students. Predictability is a product of teaching expectations and routines. This teaching process involves keeping students engaged in the activities of the day, attending to appropriate and on-task behavior much more frequently than off-task behavior, and providing attention throughout the day. Once a triggering event has occurred, the goal is to interrupt or intervene and separate from the trigger. Much of the intervention involves communication between the teacher and the student. The teacher can first acknowledge with empathy and concern to the student that they are aware that there is a problem. Providing assurance and additional time to process may also prevent escalation. For some students, providing a space or some time for the student to have a short break may interrupt the cycle. For others, providing an independent activity or an opportunity for movement may be beneficial. If a student has received prior instruction in calming strategies or has developed self-management strategies, it may help to provide calm reminders of those strategies. If a student continues to escalate, the goal shifts to interrupting or intervening to connect. When responding during escalation, it is important that the teacher remains aware of their own behavior. Several factors can escalate student behaviors. These include, but are not limited to, the responding adult's physical size, the number of people who attempt to help, the gender of the person intervening, the relationship history of the student, and the student's perception of their personal space being entered. If the escalation cycle continues, adults will need to activate a pre-designed plan for how to respond. The focus should remain on ensuring the safety of all people. Teachers and staff should protect themselves, the student, and others as much as possible, using the minimum amount of interaction necessary to avoid further escalation. Components of this plan should include moving other students away, pausing and assessing the situation, removing potential weapons or other items that could cause harm or non-aggressively blocking the student, calling for assistance if needed, and making sure an exit is available. Teachers and staff should continue to communicate quietly, calmly, and respectfully. Crisis behavior results from a series of events that ultimately escalate into unsafe behaviors. This escalation may happen quickly or take a relatively long time to peak. The same is true for de-escalation. The adult's responsibility during the de-escalation process is to avoid re-escalating the behavior. This involves avoiding surprises and planning ahead to prevent recurring stressors. Adults are also responsible for maintaining awareness and safety, understanding that the de-escalation process may take time. When the student shows signs of readiness, adults may help the student identify and use coping strategies to facilitate the de-escalation process. Throughout the crisis cycle, it is critical that adults utilize skills and behaviors that communicate dignity, respect, and consistency. As the student returns to baseline, it is important that adults work toward reassuring the student and reintegrating them back to the environment. Being proactive will help to create an environment that sets up the student for success. Offering options allows the student a level of choice in what the reintegration will look like. However, the adults will also set some expectations for the student's behavior. As part of the stabilization process, adults should reassure the student while helping the student reflect on the incident. The adult's responsibility during post-crisis strain is to support and observe. The intervention is focused on reestablishing routine activities. This can be achieved by positively reinforcing any displays of appropriate behavior and will include a short debrief with the student. The debrief should occur after the student has been calm for a sufficient period of time and will focus on facilitating the transition back to the day's activities and not address further negative consequences. During this phase, teachers and staff can create the opportunity to restore relationship with the student. This module was adapted from the Virginia Tiered Systems of Supports training on diffusing disruptive behavior. Module 5 is focused on understanding the school division's responsibilities regarding the prevention of restraint and seclusion and returning the student to the learning environment after the use of restraint or seclusion. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please contact the Office of Dispute Resolution and Administrative Services at 804-225-2013.